Wow.
Yeah.
What Filipino did you get to do that?
Shout out, I think his name was Arkesh. He's from Pakistan.
Hell yeah.
Phenomenal work. Phenomenal work.
Marrakesh, top notch.
Not to bury the lead, but welcome to another episode of Sparring Sessions. My name's Dax. I'm joined with Evan from MMA Prospects. Evan, how you doing?
Good, man. Good. It was a good weekend. Jared Cannonier turning back the clock. Good to see that. I know you're upset about that, but
Uh,
hey, I thought it was a good fight.
yeah,
I mean, that is
I'll
the
let me
war of attrition right there, man. That is RoboCop will figure it out. How old is he now? He's
32.
what? Yeah, he's still got some life in him at middleweight. 33.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's got a couple more years of his prime, so he'll figure it out. You just got to figure out the gas tank now.
yeah, he'll be back. I mean, if Henry Cejudo's headlining a card at 2028, anybody can do it. But yeah, welcome to the show again. It's been a while. We're having you back on for another prospect watch.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
Real quick, I think it's been a month and a half or so since you've been on. Somebody hasn't watched, we've gained a few followers since then. Please just remind the people, what's your page, what do you do, and why do you do it?
Sure, I run MMA prospects on Instagram. Um, I started this page as kind of a platform for the fighters that deserve it. I think I've told the story before, but at an event, NEF in Maine, in May of 2023, I saw the guy Artur Maniv fight. Was 1-0, 2-0 at the time. Smashed some guy. Was like, oh man, this guy's got to have a huge following. He only had like a couple thousand followers. So, I made this page as kind of give a platform to those types of guys that are really top level talent. Maniv now is 5-0, I think, with furyfc, and probably be fighting for them for a title fight pretty soon. I would expect a couple more fights. Ironically, he's a bantamweight, and furyfc's bantamweight title's on the line this week. So who knows? Maybe
Wow.
Maniv with another win would get an opportunity. We'll see.
Oh, maybe we'll talk about that later. Yeah, welcome. I love your page. We've been friends for a while, and we both share a love of regional MMA,
Mm-hmm.
some of the better prospects out there. I mean, we were recently at an event together in good old Plymouth, Massachusetts. I was saying Maryland there.
Shout out Cage Titans.
Shout out Cage Titans. Shout out who beat Don Shanis in the main event. I already forget.
Tom Paliarulo. Yeah.
Tom Paliarulo.
Yep.
Shout out everybody who fought there. It was mid card, but we still had fun. We still had
It
plenty of
was
fun.
tough. It was tough, man. It was a tough card to get you out to. Usually, there's those prelims did not deliver. It was tough, man. Like no finishes. Everything was decisions. All the guys that I liked that I thought were going to do well completely flatlined. It's tough. It's tough.
It
But
was
the
tough.
next one,
The
Flying Cage Titans next card's not going to be good because we still haven't heard any announcements on the fights. So that probably means we're not going to have a great card, but maybe the next one.
yeah,
71.
we'll get Don Shanis fighting some random prospect.
Let's have Don
14 and
Shanis do
17.
5 fights in a row. We'll have a Don Shanis Cage Titans card.
What's Barack Obama doing? Let's throw him in there with Don Shanis these days.
Yeah, they're a Barack Obama in there. Shout out Mitt Romney, by the way.
Shout out Mitt Romney. Wow.
Mitt Romney.
Wow. Mitt Romney mentioned on the podcast. Shout out. We're going to gloss over that and jump right into our first segment here. Prospect ratings. This is kind of a new thing I was thinking about. So this upcoming Saturday, this will be released on Monday, but this upcoming Saturday, we have a number of debuting, I guess it's too late to call them prospect now, debuting fighters in the UFC who are either on short notice. There's a few this week because it's kind of we had a bunch of fights fall out. They either put together some new fights or called up some people to replace others. And one debuting, I believe he's debuting. No, this is short notice too. So all three are short notice. Not a single debuting fighter in the UFC on here. We have
nobody with a full camp.
Nick Klein is 6-1 coming off Contender Series win. He's fighting Mansour Abdul Malik. We have Eric McConico, also middleweight. Both are middleweights. coming to fight Nursultan Ruzaboyev on short notice, and Julius Walker at light heavyweight fighting Alonzo Menefield. So, real quick, I just want to get your thoughts. You don't have to rank them or rate them, or I guess you can do whatever you want.
Just going bottom to top. I mean, Nick Klein, really odd DWCS signing last summer. I mean, kind of came out of nowhere. Hadn't fought for quite a while, and the guys that he had fought really weren't anything to write home about.
No. Shout out Wisconsin MMA.
Wisconsin MMA. I think he took that DWCS fight on 2 days' notice. It was like 2 or 3 days' notice. He went in and finished the guy in the first round. He's 9-1-1. Highly touted Brazilian prospect. Gets the contract. Shouts out John Jones, which is interesting. But then goes in and now he has a debut. Actually, I do think this was a full camp for Nick Klein. Actually, I don't think that was short.
Interesting. I will do some research.
He does a full camp, but it's really not going to. Yeah, it's not really going to help him much at all because he's fighting Mansour Abdul-Malik, who's probably the brightest prospect at middleweight right now. I mean, if there's any guy that's got championship potential, I think it's him. His athleticism is off the charts. Crazy talented fighter. I hadn't really known much about him prior to UFC, other than he had one LFA fight that I vaguely remembered. I only watched it because of he had the Contender Series opportunity, but goes in, beats the shit out of Party Time Schultz, makes a debut against Dusko Tudorovic, the Human Thumb, knocks him out in the first round, performance bonus, bingo. I think it's going to be a quick night at the office for Mansour. I don't know about Nick Klein, pretty unproven. Maybe he could be something decent. He just hasn't really faced the competition that gives me a ton of confidence, but it's middleweight. It's a thinner division than obviously the lower ones. So maybe there's an opportunity you can carve a career out of that. But
yeah, he's kind of tough. He was stepping in for Antonio Tricoli to fight Mansour Abdul-Malik. So I believe about a month's notice. So not a full camp, but more than these next two guys. Yeah,
Malik would have killed him too. Trockley isn't really that good either. Frankly, he's probably one of the worst middleweights in the division. But regardless, moving up. I mean, another 185 debut. You got Eric McConaughey. It's a tricky situation. I do like Eric. He's a friend, but he's, again, fairly unproven. He's 34, which I was surprised that the UFC signed him. I think it's a situation where UFC needed a short notice opportunity. It's a tough weight class, 185 pounds, and you need a guy that is either local because of visa issues or a country that is would have no, like maybe a Canadian guy. But it's 185 pounds. It's a tough weight class to find somebody for. Eric was fighting for a tough enough main event that would have been yesterday. And it's kind of perfect timing, right? I mean, that is the perfect opportunity, I think, for him. What, you don't think so?
I don't know about timing. I mean, that weight cut, at least maybe this was put together a few weeks before, but I mean, he'd probably started his weight cut by the time they called him up and canceled that fight. 2 week weight cuts in 2 weeks is.
Yeah, I guess my point is, I mean, everyone wants to get into the UFC, right? And this is kind of like the perfect opportunity for him, right? If this opportunity didn't come about, UFC probably wouldn't be calling him, right? You probably need another win or two. But anyways, in terms of how good he is, I think he's pretty decent. Unfortunately, at 34 years old, the ceiling isn't super high. I don't think he has a ton of potential. So whatever you're going to see in the UFC is probably the ceiling. He's facing a really tough guy in Ruzaboyev, so I have I'll try to be optimistic about the matchup. It's tough. That's a really tough opportunity. Definitely fighting up. We'll see what he can do. And then your last one, this is really interesting. So Alonzo Menefield fighting Julius Walker. Julius Walker is probably, I mean, again, 185 is a thin weight class. Light heavyweight's even thinner. Julius Walker has been the top prospect for the last couple fights in that weight class, really in the world. There really wasn't anyone else at 205 that anyone was looking at. I'm very happy that the UFC pulled the trigger on him because honestly, Julius Walker was going to fight a guy that was a negative record Bellator guy, would have just been an extra win on his
Yeah.
record. Julius gets a real opportunity against a guy that, I mean, we all know Alonzo Benefield, right? It's very talented, strong, powerful fighter. Alonzo's kind of at the end of his career. I mean, he's 37, 38 years old, I think. Julius has a really good ground game. Obviously, Benefield is going to be a huge favorite. I mean, you're a short notice debutant. You've never fought a guy that's this level. And I don't know how Julius's chin is, and I'm really not sure about his striking in general. Julius is obviously going to try to take it to the ground, and I'm trying to recall Menifield's last few fights. I can't really recall a fight where he fought a dominant wrestler. All I can remember is anything close was him Von Fluing Fabio Charant.
Go. Shout out. Go.
Shout out Rentham Mass. I'm just looking here.
He can handle himself. I mean, that Jimmy Crute. That Jimmy Crute.
Did they try to wrestle? I don't even remember.
Yeah. There was some wrestling in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. I think Julius probably has the brightest future of the three guys that are debuting.
Yeah.
Again, I don't feel great about his odds in this matchup, but I do think that he's going to have a very successful UFC career. I think the UFC will develop him nicely. I think his ground game is top notch. I think he's only 24, 25 years old, so he's got a long ways ahead of his career. I'd expect him to have a great UFC career. So we'll see. We'll see this weekend.
Some quick odds on these three fights we just talked about. Nick Klein, the biggest dog, I believe, on the card. He's plus 450. I'm seeing to minus 650 on Mansour Abdul Malik. Ruzaboyev is a minus 300 against plus 225 Eric McConaughey. And Julius Walker plus 140 against minus 175 Alonzo Benefield. Interesting odds.
That's very surprising. Yeah, it's very surprising. I think, Julius, again, great ground game. I think that's the strategy to win, but I think you're right. I feel like Benefield has a very good ground game. That's going to be tough to try to overcome, especially, again, short notice, debut. Those are two things that I don't love when I'm picking fighters, especially debuts. Debuts are, it's a lot of nerves, and, you're going to be in front of a crowd, right? He's going to be the first. He's going to be opening the main card. So we'll see.
It'll be interesting, and we will talk more about it, I'm sure, on our, well, you won't be there, but our betting episode this week, and of course predictions too. We cover every fight. Jumping out of the UFC though and into regional MMA, our forte, our specialty. I'm going to run down a few cards. There's a ton of cards happening this week. I think even on Tapology there were 40 plus, but I'm going to run some down that you might talk about in your next segment, but I just generally they're cards that I look these promotions when I'm looking for prospects, potential contender series, that kind of thing. So in order of in chronological order, you got Inca FC down in, I believe, Peru, Ecuador, maybe this week. One championship. Sometimes prospects, sometimes not. Sometimes they just sign a guy for a one fight deal and then either cut him and sign them again.
It's tough. You never really know. It's like some guys are there for like Gabriel Nakatani. Like he just signed a one fight contract. Now he's back fighting with maybe LFA or something. I can't remember. Yeah. And then there's guys that they probably are going to be locked in there for none than 120 fights, until 2088. So for me, it's very tough. I usually don't touch one fighter because I don't know what their contract looks like. I think Josh Pereira he told me he signed a multi-fight contract. That's a guy that I've had eyes on. I think is probably the best fighter in Ohio. Hawaiian fighter that if one is going to do a Hawaii card, I think he's a good candidate for it. I don't know if he's, when he said multi-fight, I don't know if that means, honestly, it probably has a bunch of stipulations. You win, it extends. You championship, it extends for 5 fight. Like, that's how their contracts are structured, and just one's tough. But anyways, I digress.
One is tough. I'm just throwing out, you're the prospect guru expert, not Genie. You'll never be Genie.
I'll never be Genie, no.
However you want to interpret it, we have EFC Contender Series out of South Africa. Shout out. ACA Young Eagles can be kind of tough. Those unnamed Russians.
Stat padding's tough to really. You have to watch those fights. You got to watch those fights to know who's real. But yeah.
FFC down in also Peru,
Peru.
I want to
Yep.
say. KSW out in Poland, Fury FC, Lux Fight League, Mexico,
A lot of
LFA this
Mexico this
week.
weekend.
I would bet money you're going to be talking about LFA. Eternal MMA in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Octagon with a K. Cage Warriors. They have 2 cards. Italy. Cage Warriors Academy. Excuse me. They have Italy and Netherlands. KOF in England.
France.
Yeah.
France.
Oh, France. Excuse me. UAE Warriors. Octagon with a C out in Kazakhstan, and UWC Ultimate Warrior Championship down in Mexico as well. So those are that's the regional card rundown. Now we're going to get into everybody's favorite segment of this Prospect Watch. It's really the only segment we've had so far. Evan's top prospects of the week. Last time you came at us with, it was 5 top prospects and 2 honorable mentions. Evan, the floor is yours.
Yep.
However many you got, let's hear it.
Same structure. I think honorable mention. Talking about Octagon with a K, they're in Czech Republic. There is a couple good fights in Octagon in Kazakhstan. I'm shooting from the hip. I can't remember the female's name. She's going to be fighting as the main event there. Yeah, there's a couple good fights that are there, but I'm not super excited about it. I mean, I never really know with promotions that are out there, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. I never really know until those guys end up coming over either to the U.S. or getting some sort of short notice opportunity. So, anyways, I'll skip it for now. Octagon with a K, Lucia Sabova, who was my 2024 prospect of the year. She's 8-0. She's a Slovakian fighter, very talented kickboxer, but also her ground game is top notch as well. She's got 4 submissions, 2 KOs on her record. So she was supposed to fight for a title last year against Pudilova, former UFC fighter. She was supposed to fight for a belt. I think she got hurt. Pudilova ended up fighting Norwegian chick, Norwegian chick. I can't remember any of these names. I'm just shooting from the hip, but. And anyways, I would expect Sabova to get the win here. She's fighting against kind of not a great opponent, and I'd expect her to get the win, and I'd expect her to fight for a title probably in the middle of 2025. I'd expect the next Octagon card she'll be fighting for a title if the UFC or PFL hasn't picked her up. I would imagine PFL would try to pick her up. I don't know if PFL doesn't do women's.
They only have women's flyweight.
Yeah, so they don't do women's bantamweight. So I expect the UFC to take a run at her. She'll be 9-0 at that point, and again, I'm assuming a win. I mean, her opponent, she's plus 500 dog, 38 years old, Brazilian, 19-10-1. So I would hope she wins. Yeah, I would hope she wins on that pretty easily, and definitely one to watch. Honorable mention. Another honorable mention is out in France with KOF. They get a title fight that's going on. Brandon Brachet, 7-1, 20 years old, talented fighter. That KOF card, not a lot to see online, at least right now.
I was looking.
Haven't seen the full card, but I'd imagine there'd be a couple other fights maybe worth watching. But Brandon Brachet, 20-year-old guy. I think he's making his promotional debut. He's fighting Nika Kobakidze, who's a Georgian fighter. Haven't done really any research there, but Brachet seems interesting. Again, at such a young age, having that great of a record is definitely something keeping an eye on. But yeah, number 5, heading right out to Mexico, going from the last promotion you mentioned, UWC. Alan Martinez, who's the glue guy, I believe is his name. The glue, I think is his name. Alan's in this kind of interesting super glue. Yeah, Alan's kind of this interesting situation where he's 11-0. He's obviously in North America having an 11-0 record is kind of unheard of. But you look at his record, he really hasn't fought top level talent. I think that's what's held the UFC from taking a closer look at him. On top of that, he's not really finishing that talent. So we're gonna see. He's 11-0, 5 KOs, 3 subs, 28 years old. He's going to be fighting Mexican fighter Osvaldo Segura, who's also making his promotional debut. I think it's one of those situations where he looks like a really good record on paper. He's 8-1, but I don't really think he's that good. He's fought in the regional Mexican MMA promotions, this guy, Segura. So, it's an interesting opportunity. I think with a win, it'll likely get the attention of the UFC. I'd expect DWCS if with a win there, especially with a finish. Probably not a UFC short notice opportunity, but we'll see. Number 4 is heading out to Fusion FC, down to Peru, going a little further south. Juan Diaz against Real Castillo. Juan Diaz is talented. He's, again, the challenge of South America is the stat padding is rampant, right? You got guys that are, you got, Carlos Petrozelli, shout out GFL, he's 13-0, but like he fought guys with losing records when he was double-digit undefeated record. The stat padding is notorious in those regions, so it's really hard to tell who's actually good. But that being said, Juan Diaz Juan Diaz, he's not Fusion, is he? He is Lux. No, he's Lux. But same case, really. You look at Lux, they do have a good amount of stat padding that's going on. He's 13-1-1. I've watched a lot of film on him. Talented bantamweight. Fighting a guy that isn't really that impressive, but he has impressive wins prior. He's beat Andre Barquero, who's a really talented Costa Rican, if I remember. And Cosio, 14-9 isn't a great record on paper, but he does have a win with Lux. So, I think it's a decent title fight. He'll be 14-1-1 at 26 years old. Probably warrants a contender series opportunity later on if with a win. So we'll see. Number 3 is go ahead.
Oh, strong contender so far.
Yeah.
So.
Number 3 is really interesting and one of my favorites, honestly, but I can't really put it over the other two. But number 3 is really cool. Fury FC in Texas. They're going to be having their 102nd card, I think. Yep. They got John Yanis against Raul Rosas' brother, Jesse Rosas. Jesse is 22 years old, 6-1. Brother of a UFC fighter. I mean, the UFC loves their family storylines, right? They signed Topuria's brother. They'll probably sign Michal Alexeychuk's brother at some point if he's not asking for all the money. But Raul Rosas' brother now, he's 6-1. He'll be fighting for the Fury bantamweight title. We were talking about it earlier. I think maybe Arthur Maneve one day could be stepping in there. I think there's a definite opportunity, but fights John Yanis, who's 8-3. He's a Fury vet, 30 years old, 4 KOs. Should be a good fight. I don't know if it's a guaranteed banger, but I think that should be a pretty dang good fight. And with a win, again, UFC loves those storylines. Definitely, that's a shoe-in for.
I mean, they just signed. Who just fought? It was the son of another UFC fighter, Elijah Smith.
Son?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Elijah Smith. Yeah. No, yeah, they love those storylines. Whether it be. Yeah. But I mean, Kennedy Freeman, she fought for her father fought for the UFC, right? She'll be fighting. They, like I said, they love that stuff. So, I think with a win, you can just assume that a champion is going to be going in. So that'd be a good fight.
Great fight.
Number 2, heading to the Middle East, UAE Warriors. I think this is an unbelievable fight, and this is one that I think you're going to see kind of the next. This guy's considered kind of the next prodigy out of Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov's gym. Amru Magomedov is going to be fighting Alex Da Silva, who's actually a former. If you don't recognize the name, he's a former UFC fighter, former 4-fight UFC fighter. This is a great fight. Amru is already a 2-time UAE Warriors champion. He's a lightweight. He takes on Alex Da Silva, who's, believe it or not, 24-5 at only, I think, 29 or 30 years old. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, so a lot of fights. Either guy with a win. Amru is obviously the focus, right? With a win, he'll be a 3-time champion. He'll be 9-0. Not sure his age, but he's again 25. Yeah, I mean he's considered up there with the Usman Nurmagomedovs, Islam. Like that's the level that he's considered in that gym. Mm-hmm. He's kind of the next one, right? So he's the next generation of that gym. With a win, it'll be 9-0. I think that's kind of a pretty logical signing for the UFC. And with Alex Da Silva, I know that Amru's the focus, but let's just say Alex De Silva wins. That's a huge win. That'd be on his record. He'd be 25-5. I think 4-fight win streak since leaving the UFC. So it's a really cool fight. I think the winner, especially with a finish, gets an opportunity with the UFC, maybe PFL if they. I know they're expanding into that region. Who knows? I think a guy like Alex De Silva, who's 29, 30 years old, maybe the UFC doesn't love that. PFL probably scoops him up, something like that. So, although I don't know, I feel like PFL has no idea what the hell they're doing. So, could definitely be otherwise. But
yeah, I think Magomedov. They've been really stacking their Asian prospects, so especially lately. I mean, look at the tournament winners from last year. Look at how many. All but Dakota.
Yep. So yeah, it'll be cool. I mean, and that would be pretty cool to have Usman and Amru. That'd be pretty cool. I think the PFL could sell that pretty well. But again, being on a Fight Pass promotion, I don't know what the UAE Warrior contracts are like. A lot of those promotions, they lock you in and only releases for UFC contracts. So it might not even be contractually possible. Who knows? But number one, man. This is, I think you know what I'm going to say. I mean, LFA's main event, Fumi Nakuda. I mean, Fumi Nakuda should have gotten signed 4 years ago at this point. I mean, he's the best flyweight in the world. He is the self-proclaimed best flyweight in the world. I can't really disagree with him. Fumi Nakuda is 29 years old. He's 8-0. He's got 2 KOs, 2 subs on his record. Sarah Longo fight team. Everyone in that gym agrees he's one of the best guys there, if not the best. You hear Ray Longo talk about him. He's like, I don't understand why he hasn't. UFC still hasn't signed him. It's kind of a joke. I mean, this guy was fighting for CFFC titles, I think 2 or 3 fights into his career. He was a 2 or 3 time CFFC champion. Smashes those guys. Didn't get the opportunity he was looking for with the UFC. Goes and does pro wrestling to make money, and then jumps in and fights on what was it? Synergy in the Midwest.
Aries Fight Series. Is that what you're
Aries Fight Series. Yeah, Aries Fight Series. Goes and fights there. Gets a title with them. Now, I think he's at a point where he's just like, look, unfortunately, the UFC will do what they want, right? You got to do what they say, and I think he's been really angling for that UFC opportunity, and he's been stubborn to kind of go back and fight for whatever they pay at LFA, 2-2, probably 3-3. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think he's been sick of that. But unfortunately, if you want to get to the UFC, you got to do what they tell you to do. It's just the nature of the beast. But that being said, I mean, we got a huge treat. I mean, he'll be fighting Adrian Garcia out of Florida, 8-2-1, 27 years old, 2 knockouts. Talented fighter. I just think that it won't even be close. I mean, shit, if betting is anything less than, minus 400, it's probably a good opportunity. Pumi's wrestling style, you just can't beat. I mean, we talk about wrestlers a lot and say what you want about them, but when you're dealing with a guy that's just knows how to control the fight, it's a nearly impossible style to beat, right? And on top of that, he's got good hands, and submission game is top notch. So I think that, look, I'd love to say with a win, that's an easy UFC candidate. I don't even know about the politics of the game at this point with the UFC. Really not sure. But what I do know is that Fumi Nakuda could absolutely be a top 3 flyweight. UFC should have signed him years ago. It would have been a great mix-in, for against a lot, would have been a great title fight for any of those guys. But hey, it is what it is. For some reason, it's the politics.
Should have been there a long time ago. He's had multiple, UFC caliber guys on his record, been doing a lot of grappling. He honestly, you could throw him in there with a top 10 UFC fight right now. Depending on the matchup, I might not pick him, but pretty close.
I think, I could look at the UFC top 10 right now. I'd probably take him against most of them, even on short notice. But you throw him in. There's a lot of guys.
Number 7, Alex Perez. You're telling me he's not a minus 300 favorite against Alex Perez?
Yeah, I mean, look, the flyweight it's frustrating because there's so many talented flyweights that are out there. that the UFC really hasn't taken advantage of, and it's very frustrating to see that. I mean, Bilal Hassan,
Oh,
did you ask for a more
don't get me
exciting
started.
fighter? 6-0, 7-0 Indonesian fighter. He taps into a market that the UFC really doesn't have. I mean, the UFC's been pushing RTU for how many years, and I imagine it's probably not making much money.
Nope.
But you got a guy that's tapped into that market. I mean, he not to get off track, but Bilal Hassan just won another title fight. He gained like 20,000 followers
Yeah.
because he has that type of market with Indonesia. It's like that's the ideal fighter. You know, signing him again. Punikuda is like such an easy pick. There are a lot of talented flyweights out there that
Yeah.
you could absolutely bolster that roster, which I know that the fans and the UFC has been complaining about for a long time.
Yeah.
But you know, Pinto just cleared out a lot of those guys. You know, we're going to see Brandon Royval fight for the fucking 7th time
Ugh,
against this champ.
gross.
But you know, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. Simo Finley. Who's this? Bad Matt, whatever. You got
yeah, Badmatsir and Dorsiev. Yes,
Dorcia, and then
yeah,
who just beat who? Why can't I remember his name? Antoine Ho. Antoine Ho.
yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a bunch of other guys. I mean, I can think of quite a few. I mean, Tommy Morrison out of
Tommy
Canada,
Morrison.
he's good,
Just not
right?
investing.
Not a lot of finishes, but again, very like talented grappler. I don't know. Just think of some other guys. There's some other names like Moody and
There's plenty.
Abubakar. He's out of England. He's talented.
Yep.
Jeremy De La Mata. He's a Fusion FC guy. There's a number of flyweights that I think the UFC just. I mean, we'll see. You know, with Ultimate Fighter coming up, you're going to see quite a few guys that the UFC missed out on. I'm excited though.
Let's
UFC, Ultimate Fighters finally are an actually really good roster, so I'm excited.
Good roster. I like that they're making changes to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't agree with. I think they should do more fun stuff, but the format's been there for 20 seasons now. Let's change it up a little, guys. So
Well,
I'm glad they're doing that.
I mean, in an ideal world, they just get rid of Tough. I mean, Tough's kind of silly. It's like Tough with the way that the sport is now, man. Like there aren't any like guys who are booze bags are not 7-0 regional fighters. You know, like
Yeah,
back then, you know, you could drink, party, and knock
yeah,
out a bunch of guys, be 5-0, and the UFC will sign you, right? Like nowadays, the sport is so competitive that it's like you
yes,
can't you'll be 4-3 before you know it, and
yeah,
you'll be fighting for 800 on I don't even know random promotions in Tennessee, right? It's just the
yeah.
sport's gotten too
That
competitive, so a lot of the personalities on Tough, right? They're not like that, you know?
yeah, that's the other thing I've kind of. I mean, we talked about it a little bit the other day, but you got Contender Series now. You got your prospect show,
Yeah,
a way to get prospects in at a much quicker. It's got to be cheaper, way cheaper than doing a full season of
oh
Tough.
yeah,
Just do
yeah,
fun things. Tell a bunch of UFC guys, hey, we're gonna cut you, but you can go on Tough to get your job back. Or I
yeah.
mean, they did that kind of, but do fun stuff like that. Just don't do the same boring thing you can't let me
I'd
get
like to
started
see
on
them.
Tough.
I would. I mean, I've been saying it for a while. I'd like to see Tough just get scrapped. Two 8-week seasons of Contender Series. One
That'd be nice.
in the summer, one in the winter. Do one in the summer. You know, stick with the Apex in the summer. Do a winter one. That's they seem to love Mexico. I mean, put one down there. There's so much talent in South America. You could honestly just probably cycle that in and have visitors come in or whatever. There's a lot of different things you could do. I think 2 seasons of Contender Series, 8 weeks apiece, would be well received. It would give you a little bit of breathing room too. I mean, 10 weeks is obviously a lot. Cuts it off a little bit, spreads it out over the
Yeah.
year. That's what I've always thought, but for some reason, I don't know if it's contractual with ESPN. I don't know if it's, some people say that it's Dana loving Tough.
I
I
think
don't know
that's
if
what
it
it is.
is.
I
Is
think
it
it's
though?
just
He's
even if it's not Dana, it's somebody there who,
maybe.
that made this sport. You can't get me started on Tough. I'll go for hours.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's not worth it. It is not worth our
Yeah.
time. Um, yeah, that's been a prospect watch. I am super excited for all these fights. Hopefully, you, the viewer, you're a little more excited now. Unless you're Mitt Romney, you should be pumped. I mean, you got a shout out
Mm,
on sparring sessions. That's the
mm,
dream, right? That's the dream.
hell yeah.
Screw president.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
but anyway, thanks so much for coming on, Cougs. We'll have to have you back. There's a week or two coming up where definitely need your opinion, either if it's prospect watch or a bunch of debuting UFC fighters in an apex somewhere. We always value your opinion here. Thanks so much for coming on. MMA prospects, go check them out on Instagram. Just Instagram. We're not promoting any other social medias
Mostly
right now.
Instagram. I mean, I'm on TikTok, but it's just for my videos and stuff. Just on Instagram, really.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you, viewer, for watching, for listening. Even if you just click through the video, um, we still appreciate the numbers. And yeah, we'll see you next time.